Here in this video I'm going to be talking about your tooling for the CNC router and the different kind of cutters that you might want to use and how to change them over. I'll also go through some of the requirements with setting up the different types of cutters. So in the CNC router at the moment you can see there's actually a V-bit in there. This is often used for V-carvings where you are going to carve lettering and that kind of stuff into your materials. Other than that, we have things like this one here, this is actually a router bit, but you can use this like a ball nose cutter. That can be really good for your carvings when you want to carve a nice little indent in. And then you have your straight cutters like this straight router bit here, or your end mills and slot drills, which are used for your profile cuts and your just standard depth or pocketing cuts. Okay, so your straight cuts. Okay. When you're changing over router bits, you're going to need to have two spanners. Okay, a larger one and a smaller one. And you're also going to need to know what the size of your shank is. Okay, so the shank is the part below the cutter. Okay, or above it if you're holding it up like that, I guess. But it's the part that doesn't have any kind of spiral on it. Okay, that one there. If it's a router bit, it's going to have either a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch shank. And you'll definitely be able to see the difference between those. Otherwise, they'll have generally whatever size shank it is to the cutter, unless it has to have a smaller cutter than the shank. Once you know that, you can have a look for the correct size collet. This is different to a drill press, which has a chuck, not a collet, and a chuck is an adjustable thing, whereas a collet is not. So this one here is our 4:3, and you can, if I bring that up a bit closer, you might be able to focus on it. You can see the numbers 4:3 there. Okay, so anything that's 3 to 4 millimeters in size should fit in that collet, and that's going to suit then my cutter here. So now when I apply pressure to it, like it would be all the way around as it's being held in, the cutter doesn't fall out. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. If you already have a similar size shank to what's in the machine at the moment, then you won't need to change the collet out. Currently it has a 1/4 inch collet in it, or one that's suitable for 1/4 inch. Okay, I'm going to need to move the camera slightly so you can see a little bit better what's going on underneath, and then I'll be moving it back. So underneath here you have got your larger spanner, which is going to go on that section there, and your smaller spanner, which is going to go on those flats that you can just see there. There we go. And you're going to be moving them so that you undo the cutter. It can seem quite violent, but that's just probably because I'm not as strong as I could be. You'll always be able to spin it a little bit, and then you'll have to get the spanners back on again to spin it the rest of the way. Now I'm just going to undo this all the way so I can show you what it's like on the inside with the collet. Okay, so here we have got the head there and the collet that sits in it. Now, the collet doesn't fall out on its own. I do have to just kind of give it a little bit of encouragement, and there's a little ring in there that holds it in place. So when I want to put it back in, I can look at where that ring is and just give that a little bit of a push, and it's now in there nice and tight. Okay, don't mind me cutting myself, I'm very good at it. Okay, so I can spin that back on so it's loose, but I don't want to ever go much tighter than that without there actually being a cutter in it, otherwise it's going to damage it. Okay, So I can put my V cutter back in, or I could put in anything else that has the same size shank, such as my straight one here or one of my router bits. And we can do that for now. So once that's in there, I can hold it in place, and I don't want to have it too far up, but I want to make sure I do definitely have enough of it in there. This is a trick to see how coordinated you can be. Oh, sorry, I've moved the camera away with my arms now. Okay, so I've got that in just loosely there so that I can actually take off my, my hands away from it, and now I can properly get the spanner on to tighten it. Alrighty. So that is how I can change out my router bits. I'm just going to move the camera back to over here because it's a nice little spot over here and we can see what's going on. Okay, so now I've got my correct one in. The next thing would be to actually set the XY origin and the Z height of my cutter. Now, different cutters are going to have different ways of doing this. But first of all, I want to make sure I move everything back away. Okay, so all of the things need to go back where they come from all the time. These other cutters go in the other cutters box. And then all of the V bits or lettering bits have their own box, but I'm just going to leave this one out for now because I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in a little bit. And spanners go away as well. Okay, so if I want to set my XY origins, I need to move my tool, so jog my tool. And if I bring it, we're always going to have the bottom left, as our origin point here. But I have this cutter that has a width to it, and I can't just guess the middle, otherwise I'm not going to get it right. If I don't need it to be exact, then I don't need it to be exact, and that's fine, and I can guess the point. But if I can't even get to the point because the clamps are in the way, which is often the case, I need to have a better way of setting my tool. So if I'm going to set my x-axis first, I'm actually going to bring the tool all the way to the left-hand side. Okay, just moving you around again so that I can show you what's going on. And I'm going to need to spin this around so that my cutter, my cutting edge, is facing the side of the material. And I want to get close, but I don't want to get so close that I'm going to actually run into the material. So that's pretty good for where I am there. And I'm going to make sure I have enough of the side that can touch my material there. So now I'm going to press that tab button again to go and change my jog mode to step. I'm going to move it across at 0.1 millimetre increments. I'm still a few millimetres away, but I just don't want to risk doing the continuous jog. Alrighty, second hardest thing is to find a piece of paper over here that I can use for my marking out that I haven't scribbled important things on. Here you go, this will do. Okay, so I'm going to use a piece of paper, running that forwards in and out of there to just check the whether it's going to be nice and close, and that will just grip that paper really nicely when it's close. We use paper because it's nice and thin, and it's not going to get too much in the way of it being a really accurate measurement. Okay, so I can press the right arrow to get that jogging across while I'm moving my piece of paper. And I can feel that starting to grip now, so one more, that's nice and solid there. And I can tear my piece of paper, which means I must be in the right spot, okay? Now, I need to set it to the centre of the cutter, not the side of the cutter as my 0 point. So, for my X0, I'm going to click on the part on my computer. Up here, click on that one there, and I'm going to type in minus, no it doesn't want to work for me, there you go, minus 5, because that's a 10mm cutter. Press enter. Okay. Now to check that I'm in the right spot, I'm just going to move my jog mode back to continuous. Move it away from the side first of all. Okay, so that I am no longer touching the side. So I use the left arrow to move it away like that, and then I can go up. When I'm just above my material, I want to go and move it until it says that I'm pretty close to being on 0 on my screen. Okay, and then if I bring this down and try to line it up with the side of the material, it should look like my cutter is just hovering above where the middle of the tool should be, the top of the surface of the wood. Okay, that's what we're aiming for here. Now I can do the same thing with the y-axis, and once I've done both of those, it will then have set my XY origin as that front left corner. Now, if I'm using my V cutter, it doesn't go as easily, it doesn't have straight sides like that, so I can't set it easily to that point. So I have two options if I need to just use my V cutter. Well, I have three actually. One is if it's not important, I can just guess where the XY origin is, as long as I'm happy that it's not going to be accurate, which I wouldn't be, but if that doesn't really matter, then you can get away with it. Secondly is you can do a diagonal from both sides, so you have a cross running through the centre of your piece, and set the XY origin to the centre of your board by lining up the point of your V-bit with the intersection of those two lines. If you are going to do that, you have to change where the origin point is in the Aspire software, recalculate your toolpaths and resave your toolpaths across. Otherwise, it will pretend that that is the bottom left corner of your work and trying to cut through one of our clamps. So it's really important that you go back and do that. If you don't want to do that, because that could be quite a big deal, the other thing that you can do is to just change in a straight cutter, like I have here now, set your XY origin, doing the same way that I have done now, and then put the V-bit in, and then all you need to do is set the height of the V-bit. Okay, so that's still quite a good way of doing it. You only ever have to set the XY origin once on the same job, and then after that, any tools that you change out to just need to have the Z height set on them. So that's another way of getting around doing it if you just have V-cuts to do. Okay. Okay, that's pretty much the main important parts of this. The only other thing I'm going to mention, I think, is that most of the time the feed rates and spindle speeds don't need to be touched on your screen. If you're going to be cutting through really tough materials or really dense materials, such as Jarrah, then you may want to change them around. But other than that, they should all be really good to go, and MDF and pine and that key kind of stuff that we tend to cut, that will all be fine with the normal feeds and speed rates. Okay. That should be it for cutters, I'd say. Again, remember, always put everything back. There's a giant tub underneath the tool bench next to the machine. Always put your cutters back in the right